Hello and welcome to Business Matters at the Hindu with me, K. Bharat Kumar. Last month, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman was in Washington, D.C. attending the spring meetings of the IMF and the World Bank. Among the several things she said, one really stood out for me. She said that the war in Ukraine had hampered India's efforts to move away from coal as a fuel for power generation. She said, and I paraphrase her quote, that one of the calculations that government authorities had in their minds was to look at natural gas as a transition fuel. She said lowering dependence on coal and the speed at which India would like to get away from it had now been challenged. Why are we here in this situation? How does a war happening some 5,000 kilometers away actually decide what fuel we use to generate our own power? Intriguing, right? The answer, in one word, is prices. Let's get into the details. So why is this move away from coal so important? As most of us know by now that global warming looms large over the planet, promising to vanquish entire coastal regions over time, aided by melting polar ice, and promising to bring on unprecedented calamities, the likes of which we are slowly starting to see in our neighborhoods. The best way to keep this danger at bay is to cut the use of fossil fuels: coal, oil, and natural gas. About 80% of the world's energy requirements are met by these three fuels. They have likely together brought on the climate crisis that we are now faced with, as they trigger the emission of carbon dioxide. However, the worst culprit among all of these three is coal, because it emits twice as much carbon dioxide as does natural gas, and about 60% more than oil. Combusting coal also leaves behind carbon particles that contribute to pollution and trigger respiratory disorders. When you see that the power sector accounts for about 49% of carbon emissions in India compared with the global average of 41%, you'll understand why this discussion is important. So that brings us to the question: cannot India move away from coal? Why use it when it's so harmful? To answer these questions, you have to answer another question: how much is India currently dependent on coal for its power generation? Consider this: as of February 2022, coal-based power generation capacity accounted for 2 lakh megawatts. This is more than about half of all the power from all sources. Natural gas-based power plants accounted for a mere 25,000 megawatts. Right? This is about 1/8 of the power that could be generated by coal-based power plants. So one might ask, how about coal-based power plants being retired periodically? Right? Sure, it happens all the time. Plants get old, newer technologies come in, but the problem is plants are not being retired quickly enough, nor are new additions being halted, and with good reason, because coal is still inexpensive compared to other alternatives. Take the case of financial year 2020. India added some 6,700 megawatts worth of power generation capacity based on coal, but it retired only about half as much. And according to the International Energy Agency's Coal Report 2021, India will end up using about 1.2 billion tons of coal for power generation in 2024. So, coal is not going away anywhere in a hurry. And even if you don't remember all the figures that you just now saw, take the word of the World Coal Association CEO, Ms. Melissa Manuk, who, on her recent visit to India, actually said that even in the year 2040, coal will still be a significant contributor to the energy sector. So how has this war made India's move away from coal so difficult? As we saw earlier in this discussion, natural gas was dubbed as a transition fuel. But guess what? Well before the war began, well before the pandemic, natural gas prices were too high for plants that use this as a fuel to be financially viable. Back in 2019, the then chairman of State Bank of India told a parliamentary committee that much of the loans that were given away to power plants that use natural gas as a fuel would have to be written off because they were not financially viable. That was in 2019. Only about a year ago, say April 2021, the price of natural gas on the spot exchange was about 500 rupees, right? 13 months later, as of May 17, 2022, it's about 1,425. It's tripled. Of the 25,000 megawatts of gas-based power capacity in the country, more than half, that is about 14,000 megawatts, are stranded. In other words, they're idle because they're financially unviable. Add to this other problems that alternatives to coal pose before us. Renewable energy, in the form of wind energy or solar energy, are intermittent. Wind energy is produced when the wind blows. Solar energy is produced when the sun shines. So there is a certain inconsistency, whereas coal gives you power on demand. The storage technologies that are required to store power as and when wind or solar energy is generated, those technologies are not mature enough yet. Further, the pent-up demand that is coming back in the economy, which is in a pandemic-induced stupor, has taken policymakers off guard. Only recently, the central government had said states need not import coal because we seem to be self-sufficient. And suddenly we are in a situation where the center is saying states have to import coal, failing which there'd be a penalty on them. All in all, it does look like coal is here to stay. But as Minister Sitharaman mentioned in the very same meetings last month, India remains steadfast in her commitment to climate goals. You may recall that the central government had committed to going net carbon zero by the year 2070, and that renewable energy would contribute to 50% of all power by the year 2030. So let's hope that the difficulty in moving away from coal is a blip in time and that we'll all soon be on track. We'll keep you posted, so stay tuned. Till then, goodbye.